So you've let go of organizing, you've embraced chaotic productivity, and you're getting a bunch done. Just one small problem. Chaotic productivity tends to amplify a problem I call the flight of Icarus. So just like the son of Daedalus flying on his artificial wings gets too close to the sun and plummets into the sea, the chaotic mind, thrown into action by the advent of structure, tends to become more and more and more and more active, more and more and more urgently productive, until such a time as you crash back into the experience of dysregulation, lassitude, general inability to carry on productive effort. The issue is positive feedback. When you do something productive, it becomes easier to do more productive things, and it becomes more exciting. You get something done, you get those reward chemicals flowing through your brain, and suddenly you want to do more to get more rewards. And that carries on and carries on and carries on until you get a destructive outcome, which is the necessary outcome of any uncontrolled positive feedback loop. The most readily available example of a positive feedback loop is what happens when you point a microphone at an amplifier that it's hooked up to. You get a progressively louder and higher pitched screech until you reach the ceiling of what the amplifying system can put out. And that is a characteristic of any positive feedback loop. It continues to grow in intensity until it reaches a physical bound of the system or destroys the system. Now, fortunately, an intense bout of productivity isn't going to break your brain, but what it will do is destroy your executive function for the rest of the day. So if you don't take steps to mitigate the flight of Icarus, what you're going to do is find yourself crashing down into the sea of lassitude, unable to get anything done. So how do we manage this issue? The first step is to slow down. As my classical guitar professor used to tell me, if you want to go fast, you need to practice going slow. And it's very similar with productivity. If you want to get a lot done, you need to emphasize to yourself doing each individual thing slowly. This is especially true in my experience if you're doing some kind of mundane task or chore. So for example, if I'm folding laundry, I'm getting the reward for doing a productive thing, but my brain is like, we could do a bigger and more exciting productive thing. Let's just get through this as quickly as possible. And if I give into that temptation, I will be spiraling out of control. And so I have to sit there and tell myself, no, we're doing this slowly. We're going to fold these clothes slowly. We're going to put them into the closet slowly. And I'm literally repeating this to myself throughout the entirety of the task just to keep things on the level. The next thing you need to do to mitigate the flight of Icarus is to practice scheduling rests. So actually taking yourself out of productivity in the short term so that you can have sustained productivity in the long term. And especially when you're starting and don't have a clear picture of the dynamics of your mind and productive action over the course of an entire day, you want to do a task and then have in your structures rest and make sure that you're enforcing that on yourself. Even if it's just a short rest, just to collect yourself, get your bearings, get a sense of where you are in the day. The last step to mitigating the flight of Icarus is to learn your centering activities. So there are always going to be some activities that actually help bring you back down towards level flight, stop the upward trajectory that leads to dysregulation. For me, my number one activity is doing dishes. Doing dishes, if I am flying low, if I'm real close to slipping into lassitude, I can go and clean a couple of dishes and put them away, and that will give me a little kick. That will make the next thing a little bit easier to do. So I'm flying upwards. But if I am sort of sensing that I'm flying too high, I can go and do a couple of dishes and put them away, and that will actually bring me back down. I think that for me is because when I lived in a monastic community, that was kind of my job. I would just, during retreat season, I would spend 8 hours a day doing dishes. So that is sort of associated with this grounded, present experience for me, and it brings me back to a healthy, middle of the road state, sort of no matter which extreme I happen to be on. So you want to, as you are practicing your productivity, as you're working slowly, as you're enforcing your rests, also keep track of, are there any activities that always seem to push me in a healthy direction no matter which end of the extreme I'm currently at, and start weaving those into your day of productivity. And if you have your structures in place, you've embraced chaotic productivity, and you're successfully managing the flight of Icarus, you have to be on the lookout for another new experience, and that is what I call quiet hours. So I was completely unprepared to have the experience of reaching the end of the day, having done a lot of productive things, really checked everything off of my list, and just having extra time. Just genuine, free, zero stress time. Because I'd lived so much of my life in a state of reaching the end of the day in regret at a lack of productivity, that the idea of not having like a looming dread hanging over the end of my day was a little bit confusing. And so just being ready to embrace that and to understand that rest is part of productivity, taking time where you are doing absolutely nothing other than allowing your being to replenish itself, and being guilt-free in that experience, that this is the reward to a day of well-managed productivity, just some time where I don't have to worry about doing anything other than being. So that's the flight of Icarus. I hope you have a tremendous amount of success managing it. And as you get adept at managing it, then you can start looking at increasing your overall throughput through the addition of more complicated structures, which is going to be the next video in this series, and it'll be up there somewhere whenever I get around to it.